Welcome to the first video of the pre-tutorial series. This is Christina from PlantRight, and in this video I'm going to introduce you to the PRE database. Before you start conducting evaluations, it's important to become familiar with the database itself. By the end of this video, you'll be much more acquainted with the tabs, symbols, and general terminology PRE uses.
We're starting out on the landing page, pretool.org. We recommend you bookmark this page for future use.
Please keep in mind that the PRE tool is currently in beta development, so your screen might look a little different when you're watching this. Wait though, what even is PRE? You're watching this tutorial series, so you must at least know that it's a risk assessment tool. Although, maybe you don't, since this is the introduction video. PRE stands for Plant Risk Evaluator, a tool used to determine a plant's potential for becoming invasive in a specific region. Screeners will use the tool, conducting a literature review and answering the 20 PRE questions online to determine the plant's PRE score. Each question is yes/no and has an associated point value based on whether the screener answers the question yes or no. These point values are combined to produce the final score. The PRE score is what allows users to know before they grow whether a plant is potentially invasive in that region. So I'm going to log into the account for our tutorial series. And this brings us to the account page of our friend Luther Burbank. And he's here to represent a typical PRE user. Quick piece of Luther Burbank trivia. Luther Burbank's career began in 1872 with a Burbank potato. He eventually sold the rights to this potato for $150, equivalent to $3,200 today, and used the funds to travel to California, where he established his nursery and experimental farms. After settling in Santa Rosa, he developed the russet Burbank potato, which you might know as the Idaho potato, the most widely cultivated potato in the U.S. today, and the kind of potato McDonald's uses for most of its fries. Luther Burbank was an amazing horticulturist, a pioneer in the field of botany, one that had only managed to gain an elementary education, but would come to develop over 800 plant varieties and strains in his 55 years in the field. After you've logged in, you will see your account page, with the organizations you're affiliated with and the evaluations you have conducted once you have conducted evaluations listed here. You will automatically be affiliated with the PRE public group, but you can also be affiliated with other organizations. So we're going to dive into the evaluations by clicking the Evaluations tab. This is where the evaluations available to you will be listed. These are either the evaluations associated with an organization you're in, or evaluations marked as public. Public versus private is important. When you are conducting a screen, you have the option of marking the screen either public or private. There's a column with eyes on the left side of the screen. The open eye icon means that the evaluation is marked as public. If the eye has a mark through it, then it has been set to private. You won't see any evaluations marked as private unless they're your own. That's why you don't see any closed eyes on this page, because Luther doesn't have any evaluations that have been marked as private, nor is he part of an organization that does. An important thing to note is that plants are separate from evaluations. Evaluations are regional specific and can only be edited by members of organizations that have content access. They're also only visible to these members if the visibility has been set to private. Screeners add plants to the database and then associate them to evaluations. Once created, plants are automatically public and not owned by an organization. This means that anyone with a PRE account can view and edit a plant profile. So there are a few other icons to be aware of, and those are the green check marks, the red X's, and the orange magnifying glasses. A green check mark means that the plant received a rating of less than 13. It's an accepted plant that has a low risk of invasiveness. A red X means that the plant received a rating of greater than 15. It's a rejected plant that has a high risk of invasiveness. Finally, the magnifying glass means that the plant received an evaluation score between 13 and 15, and that it needs to be further evaluated. We'll just take the evaluation page column by column now that you're a little more familiar with the icons. The first two columns we've looked at already, and they show first whether the plant is accepted, rejected, or needs to be further evaluated based on the score, and second, if the evaluation is public or private. The next column is the pre-score. The pre-score is a rating, not a ranking. This means that a lower score does not necessarily translate to a lower risk of invasion, or that a higher score translates to a higher risk of invasion. It's important to focus on the final category, not the exact number of points. The next few columns are pretty self-explanatory. Title of the evaluation, date the evaluation was conducted, organization that conducted the evaluation. Under the title, though, you'll see a status field. An evaluation can have one of three statuses: in progress, submitted, or completed. An evaluation is submitted after the screener has answered all of the questions to the best of their ability. An evaluation is completed after it has been reviewed. So the next column, questions answered, might not seem like an important column, but it is. More than 80% of the questions need to be answered in order for a screen to be valid. That means more than 16 of the 20 questions need to have yes/no answers and justifications in order to be a valid screen. The green thumbs up means that the evaluation is valid. Next is the confidence. You see three columns for confidence here. The first is screener confidence, and that's based on the confidence the screener has in the sources used to answer specific questions. The second is questions answered confidence, and this is based purely on the total number of questions answered. Finally, overall confidence is just the average of screener confidence and questions answered confidence. The last column is issues. Issues are the backbone of the quality control process behind PRE. Other scientists and collaborators can look at your evaluation and associate issues either with the entire screen or with specific questions while the evaluation is in the submitted phase. Got all that? Here's a key of important icons and numbers to keep in mind. Don't worry, you'll become more familiar with these as you dive into the PRE tool. For now, you can pause the screen to look over these icons and definitions before moving on. We're back to the database now. There are some other tabs here that we didn't dive into. The Plants tab lists the plants in the database. When you click on a specific plant, you'll see the plant information and pre-evaluations listed for that plant. Most plants have associated images, and those are just housed in the Images tab. The Bibliography tab is a list of all of the sources used in existing pre-evaluations. And finally, the Help tab. The Help tab is something that you should be very familiar with before conducting an evaluation. This is because there are guides on how to conduct evaluations and how to answer specific pre-questions. It's so important that there's a whole other tutorial in this series dedicated to it. Alright, we finished going through the PRE database. For now, we encourage that you look around the tool and database, get a feel for where things are, and look at some completed public evaluations.